Hello, and welcome to the Santaland podcast. I created it just for you. I'm your host, Tony Felice. In each episode, I'll read to you for 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about what we just heard. Like the cricket in my story, I'll guide you through a grown-up fairy tale, one that explores ideas of existence, identity, and the soul's journey through trauma, and the transformative power of love. By the end, you'll have heard my whole story, a sneak peek into the creative process of bringing a book to life. Maybe we'll read other books together. But for now, follow the wise cricket and discover the Santaland within yourself, a place of hope, connection, and peace that's already inside of you. This podcast is especially made for those like me who feel a little different and maybe talk about math at weddings or philosophy at funerals. And like me, maybe you have a loving husband, or a wife, or somebody else that loves you. If not, we're here to love you, because you're in good company, my dear friends, here in Santaland. Hello, and welcome back to the Santaland podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. I mean, sincerely, I'm very glad that you're here, and I apologize for last week. I was only able to get 2 episodes up because I was having a flare. And we move through those things until we can move out of them. And I am back. It's very interesting. Before I begin, today I got my first pitch for someone to be a guest on my show. Isn't that exciting? Out of nowhere. So I might have more about that later. And as we get towards the end of the book, of course, we're going to have to make some other choices. But I'm so glad that you've stuck by me and that you're listening now. So, without further ado, and this is a big chapter. Chapter 38, entitled Straight Talk. The evening that Meredith arrived, she and David reclined in the living room at Christmas Hill. The massive doors had been pushed back so that the entire wall was open space, ending at a negative edge pool. The illusion, high up, made David call this part of the house the Vertigo Salon. He topped off her glass and then sat back in his chair, contemplating the statement that she had just made about people being difficult. "You know, you're a bit much yourself," said David. "What are you talking about?" said Meredith. He left out the incidents in Prague, Paris, and that time in London. "Well, for starters," he said, "you sailed in right here past me, and then after I said, 'Hey, excuse me, are just going to sail right past me?' you blew me a Hollywood kiss and kept going." "You know I didn't mean it, David," she replied. He stared at her, unperturbed, thinking, it drives her crazy that I don't react. That's my real power. "Well," she said dramatically, and reclined into the sofa. "Meredith, you have resting serial killer face, you know that?" "What?" she said in a quick motion and tucked her chin in and dropped her mouth and pretended to clutch a string of non-existent pearls. "Drink your wine," David said coolly. Her eyes narrowed across the rim of the glass. "What's your point?" she said. "My point?" "Yes, David, what is it?" He waited. "It might be time for a break, Meredith." And then he paused. "A break? For what?" She glared at him. "It's just the same old strange song on flat keys." "What does that even mean, darling?" she replied. "Is that philosophy? You know philosophy is just taking anything out of context." "Is that your definition of philosophy?" he asked. "Taking things out of context?" "You know what I mean, David," she replied. David sat and considered her. Perfect platinum blonde, hair pulled back, elegant and impressive. Her stature filled the room, even seated on the couch, with the whole ocean past her head. She seemed to command everything. David said, "Do you know how invested we are in that man's ass?" And he thought of the IVs, the chirp of the radiation and the YouTube tones that Tom would play in the treatment room. Meredith only cared about the money she had spent on Tom, he thought. But now, apparently also the time, and the reason for her powder keg number, he knew it was coming. "You don't need me to say it out loud. You know what I'm talking about," David replied. "I don't like what you're insinuating," said Meredith. "I'm not insinuating anything, Meredith. David thought about telling her more, but he held his tongue. Tom had done a lot of really good in the world, and at the end of the day all Meredith seemed to care about was Meredith. Everyone has a breaking point, and Meredith was about to find David's. "Well, it is Halloween, so I guess you had to scare me in some way," said Meredith. Just a tinge of condescension, thought David. She knew he still received offers from other publishers, not to mention Tom's other friends had saved the publishing house during the disastrous recession, 9/11, and many other reasons. David said, "Loyalty supersedes money and fame if one is lucky, Meredith." "You sound like Tom," she said. He thought, that's not condescending. It sounds vaguely like a compliment. And he waited, then replied, "Listen, Meredith, I could give you some long soliloquy about friendship and patience and death, but you won't hear it. You're in another world, Meredith, one that Tom doesn't give a damn about anymore." "Clearly," she said with a deadpan face. David gathered himself, coiling like a cobra. Before he struck, he thought of the last couple of weeks, and what else he may draw upon for strength, and above all, a point. The memory of the trip that they had taken, he and Tom, just a few weeks ago settled over him, and a point settled into his mind. Look through the portal. They had driven the motorhome from the vineyard at the top of California to visit David's family in Nebraska. It was in May, and he and Tom were delighted to be front and center for a fight between nieces about a decapitated bunny left over from Easter. It had sent the whole house into an afternoon of steely silence. That's the way of things when a culprit's at large, among strangers who are family. "Oh, excuse me, please pass the..." and "what a wonderful idea," kind of getting along that families do at holidays. Driving down the road, Tom had pointed out a dry creek bed. David had thought it looked as parched as Tom probably felt. After a time, Tom had asked, "Should I embrace the crumble or fight it?" "What?" Nothing. A bug hit the windshield, and David hit the brakes. "Gross." "Yeah," Tom replied. Sitting up front, Tom could help David navigate, but the momentum could be too much for him. The stadium seating before the giant windshield brought 4D delights and horrors in equal measure. Tom didn't like horrors. As for the trip to Nebraska, David thought that the time with family had been nurturing, a good chance for Tom to sit quietly in the rig and work, or to visit when the urge struck. His family loved him, and they loved the two of them together. The mountains had rushed by, more wind, more braking. David had looked at the mountains quickly before the next hairpin turn. The pile of rocks was really more of giant tinker toys stacked like pebbles, soft polygons, more than anything Matterhorn or jagged. David said, "It takes a long time, maybe 1,000,000 years for a mountain, even limestone to turn to rubble." Tom replied. And David silently wondered if Tom was thinking that he was collapsing into rubble himself. David thought the pebble mountains they passed were more dangerous than granite giants. As a jumble of giant pebbles precariously stacked on one another, anything could fall at any moment. Beckoned by silence and gravity, things falling can be dangerous. Earlier in the day, David pulled a book off the shelf in the barn before Meredith arrived. He turned it over in his hand, feeling the weight of it, the weight of the words inside. He looked around to see if anyone was coming. He opened it. It was Tom's work, one of the big ones, probably the reason why their Christmas Hill fantasy existed in the first place. It was David's secret. He often read the work to steel himself against Meredith. The first paragraph of Tom's novel, Stolen Sentences, still captured his attention like few paragraphs had. Who cared if it was written in the voice of a strangler terrorizing perky college co-eds in 1958? Because Tom was more than a thriller or a mystery writer, it was evident in the words, in the point. He opened it to page 1. The chapter title read, "Stolen Sentences, a Confession." The text read, "Dear Lisbeth, I worked all day writing furiously so that all your sentences could be perfectly stolen. You don't notice me, but I'm there next to you in the chair at a restaurant or a ball game or a witness stand. You don't notice me when your child scrapes their knee and you comfort them with a lullaby known only by you and the passing stranger. You don't notice me when you graduate from college, when you have your first period and when you lose your mind after the second period that doesn't come, and you have a choice you don't see coming. See, you don't see me coming. You don't notice me when he kisses you, and his hand slips under your shirt, and he furiously scratches your face with his beard stubble. You don't notice me on the subway. You don't notice me in the nighttime. You don't notice me under your bed. You don't notice me when your stepmother or your mother or your father or somebody diminishes you in public or in private and puts something in your head to spend your life diminishing yourself in their absence. No, you don't notice me. But I see and hear everything. That is the nature of evil. We observe, we perceive, we cannot create, but we steal. That is our secret. Like thieves in the night, we steal conversations. We panty raid the cupboards you fling open when you yell through a window and throw your lover's clothes into rush hour, blocked by a yellow cab. I am there to steal your sentences, and then I jumble them in your mind and on scrumpled pieces of paper until we can piece them together, nay, string them together into an idea that only takes shape after it's stolen. Not all at once, but in the sound of a clock. One sentence placed in a bag and moved into a brain pan at a time. One stolen word at a time. I promise, I've kept them well. Secrets, wishes, damnation by witches. I stole them all. I admit it, perfectly fine. They live on this page, in my nursery, my mind. Does a typo exist if it's never made? I don't know. Never mind. Back in the living room in the present, David steeled himself for Meredith's onslaught by pressing himself further into the damask pattern chair. He knew it was coming, and he readied himself for a fight. Reading the passage in Tom's book had given him courage. He believed in Tom, and that's all Meredith needed to do as well. But sadly, Meredith was Meredith, and war was a part of her charm. This isn't about the advance, he thought. We all know it. When will she? They sat in the great room, white noise of waves their only companion. Tom was in the barn retrieving notes he forgot to bring with him to start his conversation with her. It flustered him, so he left to center himself because she was not understanding anything. David reflected on a conversation he had with Tom just before Meredith arrived. Tom had such a poetic way of looking at the world that David wondered if it meant Tom felt things at a higher level than most people. Tom had said, "There's a buzz. People tend to hive, and there's always a queen in every hive. And it can be a man or a woman in this metaphor, surrounded by busy bees who have no idea of a bigger plan." The thought occurred to David that he and Tom had pollinated their friends and their colleagues with their love. They made honey from that pollen and distributed it to the world, mostly for free. And it hurt when a jar would be left sitting for years unused or worse, forgotten, and still even worse, the ones that called it poison, only to bear false witness against them time and again. He thought, was this another moment? Was honey in this example all of the novels that Tom had ever written and presented to the world as proof of an answer to a question that they were too busy to ask? Like bees? About their business, be this, be that. To what end, really? Or the millions of pieces of trash that David sorted through? Or a child who finds courage in the reins of a horse? Why do monsters get to live, he thought. Why do they get to flourish? What is the meaning of all of this madness? Meredith could sense a growing tension in David, not just now, but with the clenched jaw that he had had over the last year. An undercurrent of resentment that she could not understand. It was her nature to push talented friends beyond their comfort zones, because then, she thought, the magic happens, whether they want to admit it or not. It was part of the creative process. Isn't accountability nirvana for artists? Who would otherwise falter? What legacy then? She thought to herself. But in the course of conversations, people often don't reveal their true selves, do they? Murky intent, just as Maria remarked upon before. Meredith preferred to wear a mask and still expected perfect responses from others. "My God, he's turned into such a drama queen lately, David," she said. This is what she's going to do, he thought. Personal attacks? "Meredith, you promised," David warned. He coiled after thinking of bees and honey, for certainly the queen bee herself was seated across from him, circling about him like a busy queen looking for a hive. It had moved, and perhaps she was on the hunt, trying to find solid ground now that this part of the hive had taken up new residence. A detached residence, if you will. It seems like all the success has changed him. He's so odd lately, Meredith offered, carefully. "Isn't everyone?" David replied with a warning shot smile. What's with the dark glasses when we go anywhere? I feel like I'm at Warner Brothers, for God's sake," Meredith said. David thought, leave it to Meredith to turn a triumph into a sideways compliment. She had visited that studio because of Tom. They had optioned Cigar for a film, still in pre-production, but worth a nice sum. More than enough to cover the advance that she was here to ostensibly collect, or ensure she was here to verify a solid return on her investment. The point is, she would not have a bargaining chip at all if it weren't for Tom. But David remained silent on that, because it was not in David's nature to sting, unless stung first. "You know why he wears them," he said, feeling like he was describing how a doorknob works to a toddler for the umpteenth time. "Why?" she said dismissively, and reached for her wine. "Because he can't say no to people, that's why," David replied. "Tom," she said. "One take, Tom?" David continued. "And also, if he's recognized he can see them coming with enough time to get moving out of there if he needs to. Too much commotion or neediness is complicated for him to deal with." He glared. She glared back. "Besides, he doesn't wear sunglasses everywhere. But you don't know that, Mare. You're here only once in a while. You don't understand that a 5-minute stop at Trader Joe's can sometimes turn into an all-day thing." "Really? He does that?" she replied. "Yes, sometimes. But it makes him late for other things, or it puts him off his vibe." "Welcome to California," Meredith said, condescending. "Funny. I get it," David replied. "We're strange, and Tom can be eccentric." "Bah, don't we all?" she replied. "Yes, but Meredith, Tom and I are caretakers of this idea. That's all." David waved to encompass all that lay before them. And after the fire in Los Angeles, they had lost all their investments. It would take years for the insurance to cover those losses. The houses David designed for friends, all gone. "More mumbo-jumbo, David. That was quite a while ago," Meredith said, with a gesture reserved by powerful, aristocratic people for people they think of as fools. David's look told her to tread carefully. "Look at it this way. We're the same as you. We're caretakers of an idea, same as you are." "David, I love you, but caretaker or not, the clock is ticking." "You don't think it's ticking for him?" David responded, squaring his back and leaning forward on his knees, his legs spread. That stance David took when he readied for battle. "Listen, he gives too much of his magic away, and you can see the life slipping out of him. He'll never say anything. You know the kind of pain he's in, physically and mentally. I've never seen anyone carry what he has. The burdens, the heartaches. Meredith, the man survived 3 attempts on his life. Most people use that shit to ruin their lives and others, but not him." "I get it, David," she replied, "but I still have a business to run. And everyone sees how you live, and they make assumptions, as people do. You live very well, you know. I know how much he gives. You both do." David replied, "Again, I'm repeating myself. We are stewards of all of this. You know that. And like you, we have a brand to protect. Our brand, Tom's brand, his brand as an author. You seem to forget that there are other people on this planet. I get it. You have a lot to do with at the center of your maelstrom. But we all get caught up in things that make us who we are, and Tom's no different. Oy, I know what you're saying, but... Meredith leaned on her knee, matching David's posture, only she was the one about to do the mansplaining. She continued, I think I'm just probably worried about him. That's my secret. I care. And with that purring statement, she flung herself petulantly into the folds of the cushion. She sat, pouting, stroking the threads of the cushion, purring. We don't connect like we used to. Something's off between us. He'll never admit it, but I feel it. David considered her for a moment, raised an eyebrow, and began to speak. Maybe... His stammer was interrupted by a feeling of a presence behind him. He spun in his chair. Meredith stayed put, pouty and petulant. Tom entered the room, in thought. Thank God, thought David. Tom had all the momentum of a staggering, forgetful professor. Gesturing with the bottle, he said, Oh, sorry. So anyway, Meredith, I want you to try this vintage. David and I found it at this wonderful little winery in San Luis Obispo, near Morro Bay. Have you been? David says he prefers wine from that part of the coast. Tom realized he had absent-mindedly stumbled on a moment between the other two. David looked at Meredith coldly, willing her to be gentle, or better yet, to keep her mouth shut. And she was so terrible about doing that. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding. Suddenly they all jumped. Kellie, David said, and he jumped out of the chair to head for the door. Why didn't she just come in? Tom asked, grateful for the intrusion. He could even feel some of the stress come off of him, but not the glare from Meredith. He thought, Kellie rang the doorbell probably because Meredith is in here. He thought, that's why she rang. He kept the thought to himself. Okay. So the protagonist arrives. Chapter 38. What did you guys think about that? My stomach growled a couple of times. I hope you forgive me. Sitting here doing my best, trying to share this art with you. Oh, on a day where the world seems crazy. But you got to keep dancing, folks. You got to keep putting it out there. If you are a creative person and you are struggling with your art to create something in the space of the world that seems to be on fire around you, please do it. Please do it. Please share your voice. Please share your paintings and your poetry and your art. Share your words and your thoughts. Share your films. Share your television shows. Share everything. Your screenplays, your plays, your parties, your celebrations. Do those things. Meredith arrives at a pivotal time. You might be asking a couple of things. One, why did David pull the book off the shelf and read it? Because he wants to prepare himself for this separation from Meredith, and he does this all the time. You may also be asking yourself, why in the world is this in here? This very kind of scary story about stealing sentences. And the reason why is because Tom is a novelist. He writes mysteries, thrillers, and horror. And he's been trying to vomit this horrible thing that happened to him out. And that's the medium he chose, and it's made him very successful. You're wondering why that's in the middle of a Christmas book. If you remember, he's struggling with words in the beginning. He's trying to find his sentence, and later we understand why. We understand why words are so powerful. The character in the reading that David does is steals sentences and words and rearranges them into kidnapping. I don't even like to say the words because it's not my creation, it's Tom's creation. And as a writer, I think sometimes you have to detach yourself from a character that you're writing, that it's so distasteful, but there's a purpose for it. And in the Christmas story, we will find out the power of words, and when they're spoken and turned into sound and frequency, what can happen. So I hope that shed some light on that. I don't know if any of you have lost someone tragically, and coupled with other tragedy together, but it does something for an artist, of course. Like Tom, my head spin off and I acted erratically, I spoke erratically, but because my intention has always been positive, I was forgiven by a lot of people. And because they don't teach you how to deal with stuff when it happens. Anyway, so Meredith arrives. Why is she arriving? She's arriving because she's not worried. She's literally there to put a foot up somebody's butt, if you know what I'm saying, in her mind, and maybe hold on to the frayed edges of their friendship, because they were good friends for a while. That was when Tom felt like he needed to conquer the world. Much like Tom, for a long time, I accomplished things to feel a certain way instead of feeling a certain way in the middle of accomplishment. Those are totally different things. And Meredith is here to try to resolve her relationship, but more importantly, Tom is one of the breadwinners, clearly, and he's brought other friends too. So if Tom's not happy, there's a good chance he might take the 5 other artists, authors that he brought to her publishing house, and she knows that. She also knows that David is not the kind of person who talks the way he does now, and so she's trying everything she can to get at him, and it doesn't work because David is unperturbed by those things. To some degree, though, Meredith she speaks for the skeptical reader, the person who may not understand the subject matter or the things that Tom talks about, so that the characters can react in such a way that it can help that person that might be feeling that way. In order to prepare for the reading, I kind of walk around the room thinking like that character. What's their motivation? What are they hiding? What you'll notice that when in the dialogue somebody asks a question, they don't answer it directly, because that's the way it is in real life. I think we talked about that before. But in this conversation between her and David, this is an arc moment for David's character, for Tom's character, for Meredith's character, and then for Kellie, who's about to arrive. And it's a story arc as well. So stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. All of that will resolve. And then we move into the fairy tale portion of our story. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on the Santaland podcast. I really am so grateful that you're here, and so grateful that I have an opportunity to put art out into the world. So take care, and remember, always love forward. Bye now.